Hello guys, and welcome to a new Steel Division video today by me, Vulcan. Today I have for you the updated battle group overview for the 15th Infantry Scots Division. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about what's changed. Quite a lot has changed with the 15th Infantry Scots since their release, so we'll be going over that. I'll be looking at the latest update changes, as well as some of the changes I've made personally in order to complement my playstyle. So let's start off with the Recon as usual. As you can see, I'm relying solely on Recce these days rather than Scouts or any of the Daimlers. I don't really find the Daimlers worth it, I think, because they don't have any veterancy, and also the Little John weapon system just is a bit lackluster. They just never find a way into my division. Relying on the Recce just seems much more worth it. Now in Phase A, you get the choice between Recce and Scouts. In my opinion, taking the Recce is always a better choice because the Recce gain access to the MMG carrier. And this MMG carrier may look a little lackluster, but it does have that mounted Vickers machine gun with 8 HE power that's incredibly good for pinning down enemy units, whereas if you can compare it to the universal carrier that come with the Scouts, they miss out on that entirely. So the MMG carrier is a really useful support unit in Phase A, and that's why I would always suggest bringing them, the Recce that is, instead of Scouts. Scouts are okay, 5-man recon squads, and are much more resilient, but as long as you keep your Recce in smart locations, they shouldn't be spotted and will be able to provide you with the information you need. Moving into Phase B, more Recce are on the table, and this time they're coming in the Stuart Recce. Now this is another brilliant fire support unit, even better I would say than the Humber Mark III. And this is because they have 2 machine guns, one 50 cal and a 30 cal that both have 7 HE, as well as plenty of armor, which is really nice because it means that enemy infantry is going to have some serious AT in order to knock them out. Same with, for example, AT guns. Certain divisions, especially like the 91st Luftlander, some of their AT only has like a maximum of 5 AP. So this Stuart Recce can really run over those divisions quite nicely. 50 cals also have the decent chance of taking out half tracks, so there's that as well. And that's basically the same you can say for the Humber Mark III, except from the Humber Mark III has less armour. So there you go. In my opinion, it's a no-brainer to take the Stuart Recces. Moving into the infantry. Infantry hasn't really changed too much for me in this division. One thing I would say though, if you're ever running out of infantry as the 15th Infantry Scots, then you're playing the division wrong, because as you can see there is a lot of availability here, and often I would say people do mess around with the infantry tab quite a bit. There's quite a lot of variance between divisions, but this is mine. I'm relying on the rifles in Phase A. I always bring out the 1-star veteran rifles before I bring out any others, because the 1-star veteran rifles just perform so much better when they're 2-star next to a rifle leader. So you make sure you bring in those ones with the 1-star availability. Bring in 1 card of rifles with the 6 times availability. You've got the Vickers HMG, which has recently been buffed to the 600 meter range. I wouldn't say that warrants bringing maybe a second card, or even like a Phase B card with the extra veterancy. I don't think that warrants that at all. But it is a nice little buff, the 500 to 600 meter range with the Vickers HMG now. And then of course I do have your standard command infantry in Phase A to give the extra veterancy to those Vickers and rifle squads. I used to have 2 cards of the 6 rifles in Phase A, but I never felt like I used them all. So I actually shifted one of those cards to Phase C. But before we talk about Phase C, you can see in Phase B, I have the 8 times Assault Pioneers and 8 times Rifles. Now these Assault Pioneers, I feel like they're really good value for money because they are 15-point squads, and generally with their grenade they can trade 1 for 1 enemy squads. The only ones they don't necessarily trade with are Falchion Pioneers, because the Falchion Pioneers have 12 men. But even 10-man squads, the Assault Pioneers can generally trade with quite nicely. And for 15 points, can work out very well if you want to like drain the opponent's manpower. I have more rifles with the veterancy. I think this is very important. And then my rifle leaders, I have more of these in Phase B. And these ones come in the Command Stuart, which is exactly the same as the Stuart Recce. It's just the Command variant. Nothing really much to talk about there, except from it comes in at 3-star veterancy, next to a rifle leader, that is. And will definitely provide the fire support you need. Now, one thing to be aware of with the Scots, this is the case for some other divisions as well, the rifle leaders are the only infantry with AT, that Piat. So make sure you are aware of that, and that you do move them forwards if you have to, in order to take care of enemy tanks, APCs, you know, half-tracks, that kind of stuff. The rifle leader will be the one that needs to do the job, not your standard line infantry. But either way, moving into Phase C, I have more 1-star rifles and also a pack of 12 rifles. You never know how hard it's going to get and how much of a slog it's going to be, but the Scottish, they have plenty of infantry to throw, and there they are in that 12 pack of rifle squads. Love it. Okay, so let's move on to the tanks. So the tanks haven't really changed too much in terms of my choices since my last video, but I have removed a unit of Honey Stuarts, and I think it's just simply because I never found that I used more than the 3 available in that one pack in Phase A. Like, you can get a second pack of Honeys in Phase A, but I just found I never used them. The 180 point Command Churchill 7s, they are still there in Phase B, and recently they had a veterancy buff, which is nice, to the 1-star veterancy, so that makes them perform a little better. Otherwise, I might consider removing them entirely from the division, but that extra veterancy buff lately makes me sort of want to keep them in there for now. The command is really useful, like the command radius surrounding the tank, and they are pretty difficult to kill, so that's always helpful. Then in Phase C, I do have the challenges. You can actually get 2 cards of these 2 challenges, and challenges are okay. I don't find I often actually bring them in, just because they suffer from lack of like veterancy again. If these guys had a little bit more veterancy, they'd be a lot more reliable, but at the moment they're very squishy, and often I just see like a Panther just pop these in one shot due to their lower armor than average for the like Churchills, for example, which have 15 front armor. But yeah, the veterancy was changed recently on the Churchill, so I've been using these a little bit more. But that's my tank tab, only going for 4 cards, not filling that out too much. Now the support tab's fun. This has changed dramatically since the game came out. The AVRE has had buffs, nerfs, all sort of stuff done to it. I believe the AVRE used to have 18 front armor. It doesn't anymore. It also used to cost more. So it costs less now, 150 points, but it also has much less front armor. And that's probably the main difference there. Further to that, they've removed a massive amount of availability for the AVRE. You used to be able to get a few more, I think, but now it's just the AVRE in Phase A and 2 more in Phase B. I used to not take the Phase B versions, I don't think, because I never found that I used them. But I think now, with the current sort of meta, like relying on the infantry divisions, AVREs can really take advantage of like low AP AT guns by like just working at the 600 meter range and like just popping them before they can penetrate the front armor. it works very nicely. So I've actually been bringing them in more than usual lately, which is why they've creeped back into my division. You also can see the Churchill Fives. Now the Churchill Fives, they are very important to the Scots division, and I would say a necessary card. Like, there are certain cards that you could swap out. For example, I wouldn't mind if you guys suggested you don't need that many AVREs, but Churchill Fives, bring all of these guys you can get, because 13 HE at 1200 meter range in phase A is absolutely fantastic. And you used to be able to get 4 of these in phase A, but now you have to take a card in phase B instead, where you get 1 more availability overall, which is kind of nice. But having like 3 Churchill Fives in phase A was just really fun to work with. Now you can't really do it anymore. There was a reason for that, and it was because it was OP. So yeah, not too much really changed here. I think they reduced the price of the Churchill 5, but yeah, it's just availability changes otherwise. Some of you may be asking why I don't use crocodiles that much. I don't like the crocodile at all. It has the 11 AP gun and 15 armor, exactly the same as the Churchill 7s, but what they don't tell you on the card of the crocodile is that it turns very slowly because of the fuel device that it has behind it. So this is just like a trailer full of fuel to fuel the napalm, and basically what it does is it slows its turning rate quite dramatically, which can be really bad for if you're wanting to face front armor against certain AT threats or enemy tanks. So it can get really frustrating to use, and I just don't like it. I would much rather prefer on the Churchill 7s for like scenarios where I need a Churchill. And yeah, that will generally do the job. Also, the command radius that it gives you is a bonus. So there you have it. That's the support. Let's move on to the anti-tank. So anti-tank, this hasn't really changed much. I just spam a few more 17-pounders than I used to. I have both of the 2-star 17-pounders from phase B in here. I've got one of the 1-star 17-pounders in phase A. I think it's important to bring 2 cards of 6-pounders so that you have 4 available instead of just 2. 2 would be a bit light. Piat squads are useless, never bring them. And the 2-star 6-pounder I think just takes up 1 extra, like too many slots to be added to the division. As for these Wolverines, by phase C, you have 2-star 17-pounders galore, so a Wolverine doesn't really fit in here in my opinion, although if you would like to go for a more mobile Scottish division, then bringing in Wolverines might be an ideal choice. As for anti-air, well, recently these Humber AAs, they got a reduction in price, and they had their availability increased on this division specifically. So they got reduced in price for all divisions, and yeah, now you can get 3 on each card for the Scots. Now I've added 1 card of these since to my division, just because these guys can be very useful as ground fire support and are relatively cheap for doing so, 40 points. Not the best choice. They only have 600 meter range after all, but they can prove quite useful. Now the Tripolstons, they also got changed recently. They had a price nerf, so they now cost more than they used to, but still just as effective. And in phase B, well, I have some Bofors available. And the reason I bring Bofors is because they are consistent firing, long range, anti-air that allow you to dominate the skies in conjunction with your own air force. So there's certain anti-air that's really good for killing like planes. For example, the Tripolstons, they have very high HE, they fire very quickly, so they do a lot of damage. Whereas Bofors, they're very good for like stunning enemy aircraft and allowing your own planes to kill them off. So there's 2 very distinct differences between the 2, and make sure that when you're choosing your AA, you are aware of that. Now moving into artillery, my artillery tab is probably the tab that makes me doubt the most. I change this artillery tab quite often between a reliance on 25 pounders and a reliance on priests. So in phase A it's pretty simple. You're going to want at least one card of the 2-inch carriers because they provide you with smoke more than anything else. Smoke is really important for the early game, especially for blocking off line of sight for AT guns and also for initiating favourable infantry engagements. So having a 2-inch carrier, very important. The HE is kind of terrible, but you buy the 2-inch carrier for the smoke more than anything. Moving into phase B, you get your hands on some serious firepower, and that includes these 25 pounders, which I have 2 cards of, 2 times 2. 4 25 pounders at 1-star veterancy. Now these are my sort of bread and butter artillery for the Scots. Some people prefer to go for the priests. Now priests are self-propelled guns with the 15 HE. So the great thing about the priest is it's not going to be necessarily pinned down as easily and killed off as easily. So counter battery won't work very well against priests. If your opponent's using FKs against you, the priests are going to be absolutely fine. However, with these 25 pounders, you might find that if you do take counter battery, that 6 strength that they have will deplete very quickly. There's always that to think about, whether you prefer the sort of self-propelled gun style of play or the sort of ground-based 25 pounder infantry style. At the moment I'm favouring the 25 pounder infantry style, whereas the priests used to be a good choice and probably still are. You could definitely trade out those 25 pounders for like a priest in phase B and maybe 2 more priests in phase C, just so that you match the availability. Now I also have the Churchill OP 140mm. Now this Churchill is only equipped with a machine gun because the turret is basically a command center and used for recon. But yeah, this is an extremely cost efficient artillery unit. They reduced the price of the Churchill OP and it comes with a 140mm off map. And the 140mm off map doesn't actually kill too much. It's not very lethal, but it definitely does pin things down, and that's what I would suggest using it for. Then finally, to just top it all off, I do have the OOP carrier with the 203mm off map, which is definitely more potent than the off map you get with the Churchill OP. And that is pretty much it. Now you do have access to the 3-inch mortar, which is like 10 HE, and the 4.2-inch mortar, which is 16 HE for 100 points. But I find the 4.2-inch mortar comes a little bit too late, and by then I'll probably already be relying on the 25 pounders. If you could get 4.2-inch mortars in phase B, I would most likely take them over 25 pounders. So let's move on to air. Now the air tab for the 15th Infantry Scots is another one that can vary quite a lot, but personally I prefer these 1-star Spitfire Mark 9s. Very useful for controlling the sky. Spitfires aren't fantastic in that I find they run out of cannon ammunition, or just in general just don't shoot down their targets. But it's, I mean, you have to rely on some sort of fighter, right? So that's where my Spitfires come in, and if you keep them in an airspace where your bofers have control, then you can pin down enemy forces, enemy airplanes, send them back to base with your Spitfire tailing them the whole way. Now moving on to the Spitfire Mark 9 with the bombs. This is a Spitfire with 2 15 HE power bombs, and the great thing about these ones are that they can bomb out certain AT guns with like certain strength. So the Mark 9 bomber is quite nice in certain situations. You can get the lighter bombers in Phase A, but 10 HE bombers just don't have the same effect as a 15 HE, and they still have the 1-star veterancy there for if you maybe want them to get them into a dogfight or whatever else. Now finally, I do have the Typhoon ATs available. Now Typhoon ATs, the main difference between the rockets on an AT and a normal Typhoon is the accuracy on the rockets. And that basically means that the HE is much more concentrated and will end up killing tanks more often. But that's not really what you should use the Typhoon ATs for. They are fantastic for killing like light to medium armor rather than like super heavy armor. Now of course, if you're dealing with a Königstiger or something, you probably want to bring in the Typhoon ATs to pin it down. But you're not really guaranteed a kill at all with the Typhoon AT on like larger units. But if you're targeting, say, like an artillery piece or like a half track, you'll probably get the kill every time with the Typhoon AT. And there you have it. That's pretty much the 15th Infantry Scots. We've talked about most of the most recent changes. I would say, though, that in general, this division is very strong at the moment. It just provides you with so much infantry and the fire support necessary to keep it alive. You got to be careful that you don't let all your 17 pounders die too quickly, because people love to hit them with artillery. But in general, your 17 pounders will most have likely done the job before they get hit by enemy artillery anyway. So hopefully you guys have found this overview useful. If there's any more questions you have or any comments you would like to make, please leave them in the comments below. As always, I will also add a deck code down there. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.